We're in the middle of the return of the Film Club Volume 2 arc here on the Golden Hour Film Podcast, and what better way than to bring back a director that we've covered in the podcast before and an actor that we've covered in the podcast before. Yes, it's In a Lonely Place, directed by Nicholas Ray, starring Humphrey Bogart. We're going to talk about one of the most kind of underrated, underappreciated films noir this week here on the Golden Hour Film Podcast. Yes, and welcome back to the Golden Hour Film Podcast. Here with my co-host, not guest host, Harry. Harry, how are you doing this fine day?
Wonderful. Slightly hungover, but I didn't mix my drink, so it could be worse. It could be a lot worse. But all good. Yeah, this film we're doing two recordings at once, and it's one of them rare instances where I'd actually seen neither film before, which is good. And yeah, spoiler alert, I guess. I think I've definitely preferred this film to next week's film. I absolutely loved In a Lonely Place. How about you? You've seen it before.
Yeah, I'd seen it before. Properly loved it. Definitely. I've seen a few Nicholas Ray films, and I think this is definitely my favourite of the films of his that I've seen. Definitely one of my favourite Humphrey Bogart performances of all time as well. It's so dark. Like, we'll get into nitty gritty, I suppose, but as far as spoiler free reviews, yeah, there's like the character that he plays, by the way, great name, Dick Steele, great character
Dick
name.
Steele, what a name.
He's very kind of he's not too displeased to find out that he's the center of this murder investigation. Like, he kind of gets off on the thought or the idea that he may have killed this young woman that he came into contact with. Definitely
very cynical, very sarcastic, very lonely man. So for this to basically be dropped on his doorstep, in most film noirs or films noir, gonna keep doing that. In most films noir, the protagonist is normally like scrambling to prove their innocence, whereas this is one of the very rare instances with Dick Steele where he's kind of like, he almost welcomes the challenge of them trying to prove whether, like, he didn't do it, like, as far as we're aware anyway, he didn't do it, but he has some sort of sick comfort in the idea that not everyone's 100% sure that he didn't do it. And as an audience member, that's kind of like a fourth wall break as well, because at the start of this film, you're fairly nailed on. You're like, oh, he didn't kill her. Like, there's no way he didn't kill her. But as the film goes on, and as the film treats the character of Laurel, what happens to Laurel happens to the audience as well, where you just do start to let the questions creep in. You're like, hang on, what if he did do it? Like, there actually is a chance maybe he did do it. Yeah, it's fourth wall breaking, totally against the grain, incredible classic Hollywood dark romance movie.
Yeah, and this came out in the same year, by the way, as well as Sunset Boulevard, which is like arguably the definitive kind of look at Hollywood, at kind of the dark, selfish nature of Hollywood, and it definitely shares a lot of DNA with that as well. So Dick Steele is a screenwriter, somewhat washed up, like he hasn't really made a hit in a long time. But
yeah, they say he hasn't made a hit since before the war.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's at least 10-15 years since he's had a big hit.
So like he kind of does work still in Hollywood, and he maybe like punches up some scripts or whatever, but he definitely isn't anywhere close to being like a power player anymore, at least. So I think the idea that this story, because he sees it as a story, the idea that story comes along, he doesn't even recognize it as this young woman who has died, because he really only met her maybe this once, so he kind of just brushes it off. He kind of sees it as like a story to be kind of told, and he almost wants to be like the reason for certain twists or certain reveals. He kind of gets off on the idea that he's a central character in this mystery. Whether he did it or not is obviously that will be unveiled. I should say as well that Nicholas Ray was married at the time of the film to Claudia Grahame, and their marriage, I won't get into all the ins and outs because that's a whole podcast by itself, but they did separate, if not during the film than just before. There's a whole thing, like, I would definitely recommend people kind of read up about kind of what happened there. And they did divorce kind of a couple of years after the film came out, but they had a very volatile marriage. And yeah, what would happen? Especially, I'll just say she goes on to marry his son later in her life, her stepson, which is kind of crazy. It's actually, there's a film called Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool, starring Annette Bening and Jamie Bell, sorry, which is based on all around that relationship, kind of. Well, actually, not that relationship. Sorry, about her relationship after that marriage. But yeah, it's kind of. It's definitely caused a scandal in Hollywood at the time, I think it's fair to say. But yeah, that's a whole kind of situation in itself, which I won't get into. But yeah, like, that's to say that kind of what was going on behind the scenes is very much kind of equally as interesting in a way as what was on screen. But yeah, what we got on screen is one of the most compelling films noir, I think, that I've seen. And I think we might as well, unless you have anything you want to add, I think we might as well just get on into it.
No, happy to just get into it and talk about how cool Bogey is.
Yeah, exactly.
So cool.
So Dick Steele, like we said, is kind of definitely some early signs that he is rough around the edges, because in traffic he kind of nearly gets into a scuffle with this guy. He gets talking, he pulls up in traffic, and he's talking to this woman, and then her husband is there, and he is objecting to the fact that Bogey is talking to this woman. So this guy is kind of puffing his chest out. Oh, you want to go, and straight away Dix just gets a look in his face that's like, you don't want to fuck with me. I'll
just
go.
Gets out of the car. He's like, come on, let's just do it, because your man's like, pull over the side of the road, and he actually just gets out of the car and he's like, no, I'll just do it here, and your man drives off.
He just drives off. Exactly. So that goes to show that Dix is like not to be trifled with. He backs himself in those kind of situations, and it wouldn't be the first scrape of that kind that he would have gotten into. So he describes himself as like a nobody in town, but it's clear that he has like a solid enough reputation, because he goes to this kind of bar where he's talking to like this thespian. I think he calls him, thespian is actually what he calls him. This kind of Shakespearean actor. He does a lot of this guy who seems again to have a big reputation, is well known, probably famous, but he maybe hasn't again had a hit in a while. This guy washed up, exactly. And he actually comes to this guy's aid because someone has some words for him. So Dix just beats the shit out of this guy in support of his friend. So again, another sign of his short temper and the fact that he has a certain proclivity to violence, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, like throughout the film, Bogey plays Dix intentionally frustrating. He's such a frustrating character to watch, similar to how Adam Sandler played his character in Uncut Gems. At points it is just frustrating watching this character at work, because he just keeps digging himself holes that he doesn't need to dig himself, and 9 times out of 10 it is because of violence. We do hear from a detective at one point basically the list of charges and alleged incidents that he's had in his past. There's an incident in the future of the film where he again just causes a roadside incident where he bangs into someone's car, gets out, and just beats your man within an inch of his life, to a point where he almost does kill him, which is one of the biggest instances in the film that makes both Laurel and the audience think, oh, he's capable of killing someone. He actually is capable of killing someone.
100%, yeah. And he comes into contact with this girl called Mildred. She has read a book that he's been kind of given the nudge to try and adapt
into a screenplay.
Into a screenplay, and he doesn't really want to read this book. It's not for him. He's kind of obviously kind of lazy. Certainly, if he's not interested in something, he's just not going to do it. So he's like, once he finds out,
he kind of implies it's your generic book, because whenever she does eventually kind of explain the plot of the book to him, he just guesses the ending straight away. He's like, he kind of rolls his eyes, and that's all he wants to hear from it. He's clearly at a point in his career where he just keeps getting the same material to work with every single time. Maybe he's been typecast or something, I don't know, but he's clearly a very frustrated man.
Yeah, and he does kind of take a liking to Mildred. Like, he does clearly have kind of fancy her, but he also sees an opportunity, which is like, right, at least if she's read the book, I can just get all the information that I need off of her, and then decide whether I want to do this thing or not. So he brings her back to his place, and then there's a funny scene, kind of funny scene, but it's also like she is narrating what happens at a certain point in the book, and she's yelling out help, and she's kind of screaming,
Yeah.
and he's like kind of worried that that obviously the neighbors will hear it and think there's something untoward going on. I actually thought that would be a bigger plot point later in the film. To be
Yeah, I
honest.
thought that would come up as well. Yeah.
I thought that is actually that if there's one nitpick I haven't, well, there's a couple of nitpicks I'm sure, but if there's one nitpick in particular that I had, I think that could have been kind of used later in the film to more dramatic effect, where it's like, yeah, maybe one of the neighbors heard that, and that's why he got into such. That's another reason why he had such suspicion on him, for example. But anyway, gets the information off her, and then he gives her money for a taxi, and he shows her out the door, and he has seen a neighbour of his who he doesn't really recognise, Laurel, who Harry's obviously mentioned, played by Claudia Grahame, but he doesn't know her. But anyway, that will obviously come into effect. But then the following morning, once he kind of he gets a visit from his friend who used to be in the army with, a guy called Lachlan, and then once he goes down to the station and he's getting kind of grilled by actually Captain Lachlan, sorry, is the captain of
Who's grilling them? Yeah.
who's grilling him is his friend is name I don't have here, but anyway,
Nikolai.
Nikolai, that's it, yeah, Nikolai. So yeah, once he's getting kind of grilled by Captain Lachlan, it's only when Laurel gets brought in that he is kind of not exonerated, obviously isn't the right word, but certainly like that's when the suspicion is kind of thrown away from him, because she's like, yeah, no, I saw him kind of saying goodbye to that girl, and yeah, well, like he definitely couldn't have killed her because she was gone long before then. Like she was fine when she left, so there's no way he did it. Like, but then that's obviously when we see those two kind of there's definitely like an attraction. She even mentions, oh yeah, I like his face.
Yeah, it's really interesting that the film does that. That basically it forces her. We can tell on their first meeting that he's infatuated by her, because when she passes him in the courtyard, he can't stop staring at her. And then whenever Mildred's in his apartment and he opens the window, he's just staring at her on her balcony, and she actually sees him too. But it's really interesting that the cards basically are just laid on the table straight away. In this confession, one of the guys, I think it is Nikolai, says like, you are paying an awful lot of attention to someone who you've never met before, and basically she's forced to admit that she fancies him at least somewhat, because she just couldn't keep her eyes off him all night. Now we also know that he also fancies her, so it's just really interesting for a romance film to do that, where basically it's just laid out on the table. There's no necessarily
Courtship
a sense of, yeah, like there's no grafting involved from either party. Both of them are kind of forced to lay their cards on the table straight away and then deal with the repercussions of that after they get out of the police station. But yeah, just a really interesting thing for the film to do.
Yeah, 100%. And then this is when Dick starts to kind of make some unsavory jokes about, oh yeah, I got away with it because his friend, his agent is kind of is asking about what's going on, and he just kind of, he can't help himself. Like he just starts, oh yeah, like I was lucky she kind of backed me up, because I was in hot water there, like they could have caught me out and stuff like that. Like, so
he said as well that there's another guy, he's convinced, and he convinces people of it later, that the actual murderer is the fella who she was meant to go on a date with, whose name is Kessler. He's convinced it was him, and he basically implies to his agent that he delivered his story better than Kessler delivered his, which is why he's gotten out of the police station. But yeah, it's really interesting as well, because you can see the light in his eyes, especially then when he goes to his friend, who's now lieutenant. He goes to his friend's house to basically explain his theory as to how Kessler did it, and it's shot so well where there's literally like a spotlight on his eyes as he's talking about, like his eyes literally and figuratively light up when he's talking about this murder, and it's kind of unsettling for the two of them, Nikolai and his partner, to just sit there and watch how passionate he is about talking about this murder that he may have committed but he probably didn't. And yeah, again, just really, really interesting. But then again, as well, with Bogey's character and his performance, it's amazing, because again, you don't want him to be this into it when he's describing it. You're like, come on, man, like you're just getting yourself into so much bother. No, he's so great.
he's like the Treasure of the Sierra Madre is probably my favorite Bogey performance, but
Yeah, same.
I'd say this it's along the similar lines where it's like he's playing such a dark character with such a propensity for violence. Like I love leading man Bogey, like romantic leading man Bogey, and like obviously Casablanca, and there's a bunch of films we can talk about, like especially John Huston films or whatever. But I do think like Bogey's character is where he just has this like you said, that kind of glint in his eye of he looks like he just would murder someone at the flick of a
Yeah.
switch. They're his favorite performances for me. So this absolutely like falls right. This actually kind of straddles the line between both. He is like a leading man, a romantic leading man.
It is kind of a cross between like his Maltese Falcon, Sam Spade. It's kind of a cross between Sam Spade and his character in The Treasure of the Sierra Madre.
100%, yeah. So he's so great at selling those kind of moments of this guy really could kill someone. He could be a monster. But yeah, he does start to kind of grow closer to Laurel, and those scenes again are shot really well.
Their chemistry is so good.
Yeah,
the first time they meet outside of the police station, the chemistry they have is amazing. Like they're basically just going like 1v1, trying to outdo each other with their "I know you fancy me." Basically, that whole shtick, it just goes both ways for a whole scene, and it's such a great scene. The two of them are so great.
Yeah, and this is where the kind of film kind of goes into like meta territory, like self-referential territory, where it's like he mentions about like a great love scene, a great love film, or a great love story has to be about something other than love. So it's like the film is strong,
and then he literally says, "So take this scene for example."
Yeah, exactly.
It's so great.
Very
so
meta,
great.
very meta, and that's what I mean about like it's very much a story about Hollywood as well. Like about first of all, he's a screenwriter, obviously, but then it's also about the story itself is like a commentary on Hollywood in a way. So we have that great scene again where he says, which is pretty much the key scene of the film.
I was born when she kissed me. I died when she left me. I lived for a few weeks while she loved me.
Yeah, it's just that's the film in a nutshell, really. Like that's the succinct version of the film.
Very meta.
Very meta, very succinct. Like that's literally the film in 3 lines right there. But yeah, so then they go on a picnic, and that's when things kind of start to go awry. He learns that she's been questioned without telling him, but again, she's been brought back. And then that's when we get that kind of collision with the other car, and he almost bludgeons this guy to death. And then this is where then Laurel starts to kind of think, oh fuck, maybe I got this wrong. Maybe he actually did kill this woman. Like
the captain's in her ear behind the scenes. We don't see any of these scenes, but obviously at the beach we find out about it. The captain's in one ear telling her like his story isn't watertight. Don't be 100% sure that he's innocent. And then her masseuse has heard of him before and knows that he has a bad history, shall we say, with violence. And she's in the other ear, and it gets to a point where Laurel can't even sleep anymore, and she has to start taking tablets to put herself to sleep. And when he finds out about this, he then tries to, because his productivity is through the roof when he's with her, but whenever he finds out how stressed she is and he can't put his finger on why it is, he then tries to sort of look after her. But basically the more he pushes to kind of ramp up their relationship, the further he's actually pushing her away.
He doesn't understand as well that like she's having these feelings, so he's completely infatuated with her. So he goes and he buys a ring, or he wants to buy a ring anyway. He asks her to marry him, and she obviously doesn't know what to do, because she has this again great scene with Mel, who's his agent, where Mel says that great line, "You knew he was dynamite. He has to explode sometimes." So it's like he's almost Mel just excusing his shitty behavior in a way, which again, commentary on Hollywood, obviously. Not exactly a town that's unfamiliar with pieces of shit, let's be honest. And then she's kind of making plans then to leave him and to flee, because she doesn't want to like have the conversation in case he reacts poorly, he reacts violently. But he doesn't understand this, so they go and have like this engagement party, and that's when Mel actually comes out again with this great line. He's like, Brody, who's a guy in the studio, is like, Brody wants your adaptation. He actually got your adaptation because we gave it to him as a secret. He liked it, but Mel doesn't actually say that. He's like, I didn't like it, but look, I'm the guy who tried to talk Selznick out of Gone with the Wind. Again,
Yeah.
very, again, obviously, again, very meta kind of scene about, like, that's obviously the biggest film of all time at this point in time. So, there we go. But then he meets the woman who's a famous actress who, it's been inferred, insinuated that Dix was violent to her in the past when they were in a relationship. She does seem quite, like, happy to see Dix, so that does throw up whether that's actually true or not. I probably
Yeah.
think it probably still is true, but it's obviously like maybe in public she just doesn't want to like kind of poke the bear, as it were. But yeah, he feels bad. He actually gets really kind of pissed off with Mel, and I think he punches Mel, if I'm not mistaken.
He basically the phone rings because he's so angry that
Yeah.
Mel and Laurel behind his back have submitted this script of his without his consent, and that when the phone rings for Laurel, which is something to do with something else, it seems, he snaps and he grabs the phone, and then Mel kind of reaches over to take the phone off him and tell him to calm down, and he just backhands him in the face and smashes his glasses into his eyes.
He does apologize.
So Mel goes off to the bathroom, and then
Yeah.
he actually goes into the bathroom, after him to try and apologize to him. But when he comes back, it turns out that Laurel is gone.
Yeah, she's gone. So he goes home. She's kind of packing really quickly. And again, he gets there, and eventually he manages to get in, and she's trying to make out like she's not just been packing and trying to flee the scene.
Yeah, she's packing for their honeymoon. She's basically
Yeah.
insinuating.
Yeah, exactly. He gets a call, and
Then,
turns out
yeah.
that well, guess what? Kessler has confessed to the murder. So Lachlan and Nikolai are like, oh, we're really sorry about that. We're really sorry.
Actually, so before that, basically, he spots that she doesn't have her
Yeah.
wedding ring on her finger, and then he flips his lid. He pieces together she's trying to leave him. He takes her down. He strangles her. He answers the phone because it's the airport ringing to say that her ticket that a ticket became available for her flight to New York. He basically tries to kill her then, and then the phone rings again. He kind of stops himself, composes himself, answers the phone, and then they apologize. Well, Nikolai apologizes to Dixon, and then Lachlan asks, can he speak to Laurel? He hands the phone over to Laurel, who's like still like holding her throat because she's literally just been strangled, and she says to him, yesterday this would have meant so much to us, now it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. And basically just a dejected Dixon just shuffles his way out of the room because, I mean, he has literally just strangled her, and he walks out, and that is actually how the film ends.
Yeah,
which is wild.
And Nicholas Ray actually said the initial ending they had was that Dixon would literally kill her, and then just as she kind of drew her last breath, the phone would ring, and then he would get the news. Yeah, you're in the clear.
Yeah.
We have this suspect. He killed himself, etc. So it's like just at that moment he would find out that and she would find out obviously as well, had she been alive, that he was innocent, but then he actually now killed someone. Now he wanted to kind of leave it on. I actually think where it ends is a more interesting note. Well, I say interesting.
Yeah, I would agree.
Violence is obviously like, and I'm sure there would have been it would have been still very hard hitting, and the point it was trying to make would have been still very kind of apt and apropos, whatever you want to call it. But like where it ends is kind of more kind of just, it's almost more of a good punch because it's,
yeah, he has to live with the shame, and she basically gets to move on from this abusive relationship.
Thankfully, yeah, like she gets to still live, and then he goes living the rest of his life knowing he fucked up the one good thing probably that has ever happened to him, and well, certainly in a long time. And yeah, that's such a dark kind of ending, and that's In a Lonely Place. Yeah, I absolutely love this film. First time I saw it, I gave it 4.5 stars, and second time, yeah, I gave it 4.5 stars again. Really, really love it. Like I said, one of my favourite Bogey performances. My favourite Nicholas Ray film that I've seen to date. I think I've seen about 3 or 4, so not many, but like of the ones I've seen, it's definitely.
For context, the other one that we did was Rebel Without a Cause.
Yeah,
that's the other one that we've covered on the podcast. I would love to do a few more Nicholas Ray films on the podcast, though. I'm purposefully not gonna watch Johnny Guitar in
Yeah.
case we end up doing it, because that, first of all, that movie just has such a cool name.
Yeah.
But secondly, yeah, I'd love to do something like Johnny Guitar on the podcast if that's something that people will be interested in.
They Live by Night is another film I've seen that's really good. Our boy Farley Granger's in that. It's like a Bonnie and Clyde type story, but kind of yeah, it's definitely like it's in the fields towards the end. It's more of a noir, obviously, than a straight like kind of crime film, if you want to call it that. But yeah, that's also really good. But yeah, what do you think? What you give In a Lonely Place, Harry?
I gave In a Lonely Place 4.5 stars. I thought it was amazing. I really liked it. I think I said on Letterboxd in my review that going forward, whenever I think of the moody classic Hollywood romance movies, this would be the one that comes to my mind first. Well, actually, no, that's Casablanca. But after Casablanca, this would be the next one that comes to mind. Good man, Bogey. But yeah, no, I absolutely loved it. Again, it's incredible. I love how meta it is. It's really well shot as well.
Yeah,
There's a lot of the sequences in the beginning when Mildred is in Dixon's apartment are shot really interestingly. Like when she's explaining the book, she's actually looking down the lens of the camera, which isn't really a thing that was done at the time as well. That shot of when he opens his windows and you can see Laurel on her balcony across the way is such an amazing shot as well. It's so iconic. Again, the shot with the light in his eyes when he's discussing the murder or his theory towards the murder is amazing. And then that final shot of him walking out that archway is just so powerful. It's such a gut punch. But I love this film, absolutely adore this film, couldn't recommend this film enough. And yeah, I'm glad that we're back on the old Hollywood films, because I feel like neither of us have really watched many old Hollywood films the last few months that we haven't actually really been covering them on the podcast.
Yeah.
So it's kind of nice. I've got a couple there. I actually got in the Criterion for In a Lonely Place. I watched it there.
Oh,
But yeah, I've picked up a few classic Hollywood films. I got Angels with Dirty Faces.
oh, it's savage.
I got
savage.
the Criterion 4K of Mildred Pierce. I got Roaring Twenties, and I got this.
Roaring
So
20s is
yeah,
class.
there are a few films that I am looking forward to tucking into.
Yeah, no, Angels with Dirty Faces and A Roaring Twenties. You're gonna like those.
Yeah, I've
for
never
sure.
seen a James Cagney film,
He's
and I just
great.
can tell that he's a guy who I'd love. I really
He's-
want to see White Heat as well, but I just want to get them all and then just like do a day where I just go through James Cagney, you know?
He's probably the OG gangster. Like as much as obviously there are like certain gangster actors.
Oh, how dare you!
Well,
Edward G. Robinson, thank you very much.
no, but in terms of like, well, he was playing gangsters even before Edward G. Robinson, though.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, two amazing actors. We're not gonna debate over that.
And
Two
shout out
amazing
as well
actors.
to Paul Money as well. Shout out him as well. That whole era of gangster films are so class.
And yeah, now we're going to move into the portion of the podcast where we talk about what we've been watching lately. So, do you want to go first, Harry?
Yeah, sure. Neither of us have really watched much, but we are flush for time with this week's episode. First and foremost, I watched Sherlock Holmes in Washington. I set off to cover the Basil Rathbone Sherlock Holmes films because I watched The Hound of Baskervilles all that time ago and really, really enjoyed it. And I have yet to be really into one since, to be honest. I'm like 5 or 6 films deep into these old Sherlock Holmes films. They do just sort of feel like elongated TV episodes of the likes of Father Brown, Poirot, Murder, She Wrote. They just feel like TV episodes that have been drawn out. But I'm still just... according to Reddit, I thought I was... I thought I got through the World War II propaganda Sherlock Holmes films, but apparently not. Apparently this one's just the same, and yeah, like I just really want to enjoy them, and I know that there is a few later on in the series that apparently the quality of the series goes right back up again. So I am holding out hope, and I am going to stick around and keep covering them. But yeah, I am yet to feel anywhere near as impressed by any of these old Sherlock Holmes films as I was by not the OG, because Sherlock Holmes has literally been like over 200 films, but the OG Basil Rathbone, Hound of Baskervilles. Nothing has come even remotely close to it since. After that, I then actually watched that new Netflix series, American Manhunt, the Hunt for Osama bin Laden or something like that. And it's just, again, you want to talk about propaganda, it's just a Netflix CIA propaganda piece. The only thing of interest in this was how they actually, got him in the end. That whole that whole part was fascinating to me. But like, the choice of talking heads in this is bizarre. Like, you've some guys who are like just so clearly racist, and like they were licking their lips at the thought of killing people in the Middle East, like regardless of what was happening. They were very quick to just waddle on over the Iraqi war thing. Like, I think I got like 2 sentences. And then the funniest thing, of course, is that girl who was a talking head for the entire series, who just keeps harping on about the fact that she got into the CIA because she wasn't even the head. She was the deputy chief of her sorority in high school. So she ended up, at the age of like 22, being a drone pilot in the Middle East, killing people.
Fuck's sake.
America's not real. No. I'm so glad that Americans don't really exist, and that we all just live in a fantasy where we pretend that America's a real place, because they're so terrifying. Americans are terrifying. And then, last but not least, or should I say last but least, I watched Captain America: Brave New World. There was little sprinkles to begin with that did have me hoping that this was going to be like along the lines of Winter Soldier, which is maybe my favorite Marvel movie. Like the espionage stuff, when done properly by Marvel, can be interesting. But this is actually a sequel to The Incredible Hulk, which you need to have seen Eternals to understand why the big set piece happens. Yeah. It is, yeah. I laughed out loud when Red Hulk and Captain America are fighting on a green screen road, and without this being any prior knowledge, trying to talk Red Hulk, who is one of the fucking coolest characters in the comics, is so underused. Trying to talk him down, he says, "This is where you used to bring your daughter as a kid," and it's just a green screen road. Like, that's so funny. Like, that is so hilarious. Yeah, I think obviously I have already seen Thunderbolts, and this came out before Thunderbolts, so the MCU is on the up again. But my God, did this suck? And it just treats its audience like idiots. Like, if you've seen 3 action movies, you can predict this entire film and its twists. And that fellow with the green brain head, just no aura, absolutely zero aura. Like, you want to talk about Marvel villains who just, like, we're gonna look back and laugh on, like, oh my God, he was the villain in that movie. It is so funny to me. This movie sucks, which is a shame, because Anthony Mackie seems like a cool guy, and Harrison Ford, he made a lot of money. Good for him. Good for him. What about you, Kate?
Yeah, so I went in for a second Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Liked it more the second time around. Still a bit, like, the first hour looked, it's still a bit weird, like, by how much flashbacks, just the amount of flashbacks that are used. It's not always as smooth as it should be, but I didn't really mind as much, maybe because I expected it. But then, like, from kind of the certainly from the submarine set piece onwards, not even the submarine, but the submarine set piece, once we get to, like, Tramal Tillman's kind of section of the film, where that guy is just he's so great. He's such a good, anyone who's seen Severance will know how great Tramal Tillman is. And yeah, that guy is just an amazing actor. He's so cool. And then everything from that onwards, the submarine set piece, the Sevastopol, is like a horror, just genuinely amazing horror filmmaking. Like, oh, it's amazing. It's so tense, it's so gripping. The final set piece is great. I do think Gabriel is a bit like, he's a good villain. Well, I say good villain. He's effective at what he is, but, like, I don't think villains have ever been Mission Impossible's strong suit, apart from, I would say, Philip Seymour Hoffman in Mission Impossible 3, and Sean Harris as Solomon Lane in 5 and 6 and Rogue Nation and Fallout, who I really like as well. But like generally speaking, villains in Mission Impossible are always weak. It's always been carried by kind of the set pieces, the action, just how amazing they are, how well thought out they are, and how well executed they are. So yeah, still a good, like I said, still a good, satisfying end, if it is an end, for Ethan Hunt. Even if it's not quite to the level of Cruise and McHugh's other Mission Impossible films. The Ballad of Wallace Island. Do you know who Tim Key is?
Say it again.
Do you know who Tim Key is? Comedian. He's like a comedian and actor. I'm not actually sure if he's a stand-up comedian, but he's an actor. Like, he's a comedic actor.
I'll look him up. I'll see if I recognize his face.
Yeah, he's just such a charming presence in everything he's in. Like, he's very affable, very kind of jolly, very down to earth. Proper, like,
He was in Mickey 17, apparently.
yeah, actually was he? Yeah, actually think he was. Now that you mention it,
He was Pigeon Man.
he's really like he's just very effective at playing that kind of role. Like, he's not someone who you'd like say has an amazing, like, huge breadth of like
Like a presence.
yeah, like not even that. Someone who wouldn't be necessarily someone you could see playing like a bunch of different roles, but as someone who plays that kind of jolly, kind of big-hearted, warm presence, he's really great at that kind of thing. So basically, this is a story of a guy who has won the lotto, so he goes to live on this place called Wallace Island, but he's kind of lonely. He's there by himself, so he's a big fan of this folk duo, played by Tom Basden and Carey Mulligan, actually, who have since broken up, both as a couple, as a relation, like in a relationship, but also as a duo, like as a musical duo. But he kind of throws a bunch of money at them to kind of get them to play this gig on the island because he's such a big fan of them. So then it just shenanigans ensue. Let's just say that it's based on a short film that Tim Key and Tom Basden had made together about 15 or so years ago. But it's kind of one of those films that you know exactly where it's gonna go, and you can kind of almost time out the story beats. But it's actually, that's nothing wrong with that, because it's really good at what it gives you. Like, it's like I said, a big warm hug of a film. There's one criticism I have, it's that the songs aren't necessarily as catchy or as much of an earworm as I would hope. I think, but given how funny the film is and how warm the film is, I don't think it's quite as much of a problem as it could be. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. Check that out if you're kind of a fan of that kind of British humour. And finally, Jesse Armstrong has obviously been like made some of the greatest TV shows of all time. The thick of it. He was involved in Veep. He was involved, if I'm not mistaken, in Peep Show, I believe he was. And he also made Succession, which is like one of the greatest TV shows of all time. And Mountainhead is the film that he's made after that. So it's starring Steve Carell, Rami Youssef, Jason Schwartzman, and Corey Michael Smith. So four tech bro kind of billionaires, although one of them isn't actually a billionaire, which is a constant source of like comedic humor, because he's kind of like, they're just little bro the whole time. It's kind of funny. But it's four kind of very, very wealthy men who kind of go to this place, Mountainhead, which is owned by it's like the home of one of these guys. But as like this kind of global disaster is slowly starting to unfurl, which has been caused by one of the guys, and then it's like kind of what the response is. So it's like basically the film is about how these super rich guys, the hubris that they have, they think that they can just solve all the world's problems by themselves, and if they throw enough money at it, they basically see themselves as these kind of gods who can like shape the world however way they see it, kind of like Citizen Kane figures, if you want to call it that. But to be honest, I was let down by it. Like, Succession is definitely one of the best written shows of all time, one of my favorite shows of all time, and this is kind of along similar lines of like kind of rich people are bastards kind of thing, but nowhere near as subtle, nowhere near as like well observed. I will say the final act is really funny, and the final act goes to like some really darkly, blackly funny places. Proper laughs I got in the third act. But it's just a shame the rest of the film couldn't really live up to that kind of that quality. It takes a long time to get to where it wants to go to, and it's just kind of repetitive for like well over an hour. Just it's kind of doing the same thing over and over again. And then once it finally gets to kind of the final act, and once a certain plot point happens, then it kind of goes into overdrive, and that's when it starts to become really funny and really interesting. But like I said, it takes a long time to get there. So I was kind of disappointed in that, but it will still be seated for whatever Jesse Armstrong does next, because he is very, very good at what he does. So yeah, that's what I've been watching lately. So yeah, that's In a Lonely Place, and what do you want to introduce next week's film, Harry?
Yeah, so we thought, having covered a fairly bleak 1950s classic Hollywood film about a man who's, well, to begin with, is a potential abuser in relationships, but he's ultimately a very charming guy, but then he goes on and does some pretty irredeemable stuff. We thought we'd lift the mood and do A Streetcar Named Desire, which, if you can't tell by Shane's laugh, is an even darker
Yeah.
an even darker tale of listen, we'll get into it next week, because it is no laughing matter, but I have to say Vivian Leigh and Marlon Brando are so amazing in that movie. Whatever about we'll talk about the movie, and I already said at the top of this episode that I did prefer this film. I did really enjoy Streetcar Named Desire, but if you haven't seen it before, I would really recommend you watch it before next week's episode, because those two performances in particular, Marlon Brando and Vivian Leigh, are both outstanding. And it's another director who we've covered once before on the podcast, Elia Kazan, who did On the Waterfront, the other Marlon Brando film that we've done on the podcast. So, yeah. Looking forward to that. And, as I said, I love Film Club. Film Club's probably my favourite act that we did, other than Noirvember and Universal Monsters. So it's nice that we have a little 2-month one where we, not that we don't cover whatever we want anyway, but there's absolutely no limits to Film Club. We could just kind of pick and choose whatever we want to watch.
100%. And yeah, that's been this week's episode of the Golden Hour Film Podcast. So yeah, tune in next week for Streetcar Named Desire. But yeah, that's all we have time for this week. So thanks for watching, everyone.
See yous.